Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, I am joined by author and spoken word poet, Shanti Hershenson. Shanti has been writing since she was young, and, she writes in different genres. So we're going to be talking to her about what she writes about and why she writes about it and how she got started. So Shanti, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Of course. So my name is Shanti Hershenson. I just turned 16 and I'm a published author. I really have been writing for as long as I can remember, but it wasn't until the last couple years that I actually started writing novels and then publishing them through Amazon's Kindle Direct Publishing and Ingram Spark and turning this into like a career. And now it's just a part of my life now. I do interviews, I do book signings, and I really can't imagine doing anything else.
Well, congratulations. Sound like you're doing a very good job. Why don't you explain to the listeners how you actually got into writing and what made you want to write?
So I can remember particularly like when I was writing my first novel. So it was in 2020 around that summer. So it was like my first summer where I really had nothing to do. Like, because previously like I'd been in summer camp and stuff, and for the first time like I was really like isolated and like alone, and I like it was the first summer where I really had nothing to do. And as a result, because I wasn't in summer camp and I was at home literally all day, I started writing my first novel. And like, as I said, writing was always something that I really enjoyed doing. However, I really didn't have the time to write a full-length novel until I was stuck at home because of lockdown. And then I just sat down and I started writing this book, Biomlock. And really, it has a lot of themes of like isolation. Of course, it's also about an alien invasion. And just really from there, like I never stopped writing. And then as I was editing that first book, like I kept on writing more.
So tell the listeners what genre you write in.
So I write in a couple different genres, but I'd say my main genre is definitely science fiction. I've loved the genre since I was literally a little kid. Like I was obsessed with like Star Wars and all of that. So really like it was no surprise that that's what I've like been writing. However, I'm also like interested in like writing more contemporary. The current book I'm writing is more like realistic fiction. So really I'm really just looking to like expand, but it all did start with science fiction.
You also focus on anti-bullying. So tell us
I do.
about that and why you like to focus on that.
So I have a couple books that have heavy themes of anti-bullying. Of course, there is You Won't Know Her Name, which is my novel told in poetry, and it's based on a true story. And really, I've been bullied a lot. Like, I know, a lot of people can relate to that. So, really, like, because I've had such, experiences with it, like, really, I find that it's really important for me that I incorporate these themes in my writing because then I can spread awareness about the topic and I can, help other people with my writing.
So I'm sure you're busy with school and everything and all that you got going on. So how do you balance school and writing?
So what I try to do is I try to do maybe 30 minutes of writing and 30 minutes of homework. Every day I create these to-do lists, and with my to-do lists, I really try to like map out everything I have to do. Sometimes, especially if I have more to do, I will figure out how long approximately it will take for me to do each thing. And then from there, like I will just maybe do the things that are going to be easier first and then get to the longer stuff or vice versa, depending on how urgent it is.
So if you could give some tips to some young and upcoming writers out there, what would they be?
So first, I would definitely recommend just writing the same amount every single day. I literally say this in every single interview, but it's genuinely been the most helpful thing I've done. It's how I've been able to write so many books. It's how I've been able to finish my book so quick. For me personally, I do 1,000 words a day. Sometimes it's more, especially if it's over the summer, then it can be like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, but I never write less. And really, this teaches your brain to then be able to have like this kind of minimum you write every day. And now, just because I've been doing it for so long, like it's been years where I've just been writing every single day. It's just a habit. It's like, you brush your teeth every day and I write every day. So it's really, that's like my first tip. Another thing, and I tell this a lot to people, is like, don't let your age get in the way. And I say this because I know there are a lot of people, particularly young writers, but also adult writers too, who are like, oh, for example, if you're young, you're like, oh, I'm too young to write a book. I'm just going to do it when I'm later. But then on the other side of things, there are adults that's like, oh, I'm too old to write a book. I should have done this when I was younger. And really just realizing it's like you're never too young or too old to write a book. And if you're at the age where you can want to write a book, then you should just try and get started.
Absolutely. Speaking of writing a book, there's publishing. So, in your own words, kind of describe the publishing process.
So for me, I self-publish. So in some ways, it's an easier process. In some ways, it's a much more difficult process because I do everything on my own. I am responsible for reaching out to cover designers and editors and everything like that, and then getting everything to come together. So for me personally, the main platform I self-publish with is Kindle Direct Publishing, but I also use Ingram Spark for my hardcovers and for the more expanded distribution, especially with like book signings and all of that. And I have to say that even though it's really difficult, it's a lot of fun, and I'm really like grateful for this experience. Of course, in the future, I would really like to traditionally publish, and I am working towards that. However, right now, the learning experience of being able to like basically be my own publisher and doing all the work has been really, really fun. I also do my own marketing, and I am completely responsible for like my own marketing campaigns. Of course, like if I need money, like I might ask my parents if I don't have enough. And really like then also having to do all that is like a whole nother side of it. Like on one hand, the writing is difficult, but the marketing is also so much more challenging, but so much more fun. And I mean, it's not more fun, but I find it really fun. And with each book I release, I end up learning more and more.
So, what advice would you give to other kids who have experienced bullying, and also what do you feel schools can do better to stop bullying?
So, a big piece of advice that I would give to kids who have been bullied is speak up about it. Tell someone, a trusted adult or an older sibling, someone who you can confide in. It doesn't matter who it is, whether it's a teacher, a coach, a parent, a relative, just speak up and tell someone and talk to them about it. Because I feel like everyone always has at least one person. And like receiving that help and getting that support is extremely important. And then from there, I would say, also distance yourself from the situation because sometimes what I find is like the bully can be someone in your friend group. And if that's the case, try to like, and I know it's hard and sometimes it doesn't always work, but and just try to like, get some distance between yourself and the bully. If you're working on like, for example, maybe it's like you're working on a group project with them. If you're comfortable, speak up and talk to your teacher. And that's kind of like my third piece of advice is like say something about it. I don't recommend necessarily, like confronting the bully about it unless you're fully comfortable doing that. But talk to your teacher. Find there if there's a trusted adult in your school, that's the best thing you can do. And then as for schools, I think schools need to do a lot better with how they handle bullying, mainly because there are a lot of schools they're like, oh, we have a zero tolerance policy for bullying, and then they kind of don't handle it too well, meaning like they need to have some sort of system for what they're going to do. They need to punish the bully. They need to teach the bully a lesson like you can't do this, and they also need to keep the victim safe. And that can be very difficult for schools to do, but they need to learn how to do it. They need to train the teachers that have like anti-bullying protocols. They need to like adapt like anti-bullying programs into their system because otherwise like it's a total mess.
So talk about some of your influences. Who influences you to write, and who do you like to read, and what books would you recommend for other teens to read?
Ooh, I have a lot of different answers for that. Like there are a lot of the authors of my favorite books have influenced me in some way. There's something they've done that I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so cool. I wish I could do that. And then maybe I try to start, figuring out what I really like and then kind of incorporating that into my own writing. But as for like the books I read, I read everything. So like my number one favorite book is The Perks of Being a Wallflower. It's like I read it when I was in seventh grade, and I've like never read a book that I've enjoyed more. I am obsessed. Other than that, I think I really love every single book by Leigh Bardugo. She's like my favorite author ever, and I really recommend every teenager read her book. She's an amazing writer, and her character backstories and her plots are just incredible. And then other than that, I really like The Book Thief, and that's another just really beautifully written book with a really interesting writing style and just like a beautiful sort of, storyline.
Tell us about any current or upcoming projects that you're working on that people need to know about.
So I just published book number 15, which is called Helipads in Heaven, and that's like the best book I've ever written, so I really recommend people checking that out. I also have a book coming out on December 10th, which will be announced tomorrow, and I'm really, really excited about that. And then other than that, like my next like really big release, because the book I have coming out on December 10th is actually like a crossover between two different books. So you kind of have to have read both of those books in order to enjoy it. So it's not one of my more larger releases. Then my next really large release is a book called Little Green Man, which I was promoting on TikTok around the time I was writing it and on my social medias. And that book is gonna come out sometime early to like mid 2024.
All right, so the listeners can keep up with everything that you're up to because you're a busy
Yeah.
person. Throw out your contact information.
So, yeah, you can find me on my website, which is just shantihershenson.com. That's ShantiHershenson.com. You can also, of course, find all my books on Amazon and basically everywhere you buy books, you like buy books online. Um, my social medias are my Instagram is just at Shanti Hershenson, and then my TikTok is at Shanti Who Writes. And I really recommend you follow me on TikTok because like I have like all this cool stuff on there.
All right, we'll close this out with some final thoughts. Maybe if there was something I forgot to touch on that you would like to talk about, it, just any final thoughts you have for the listeners.
I don't think so.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, ShantiHershenson.com. Be sure to check her out. Check out all of her books and everything that she's up to. Please be sure to follow, rate, review, and share this episode to as many people as possible. If you have any guest suggestion topics, cjackson102 at cox.net is the place to send them. As always, thank you for listening. And Shanti, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
For more information on the Living the Dream podcast, visit www.djcurveball.com. Until next time, stay focused on living the dream.